Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and back with us here on America's Newsroom. Senator, this is a moving target, is it not?
It absolutely is. We got metastasization of jihad around the globe, and a lot of those folks are in Western Europe and in the U.S.
And it's more and more difficult to keep up with them. Here is what we found in our Fox polling last night. You know, the NSA surveillance program that's been debated so much for the past week, 65% of Americans believe that program prevented a terrorist attack. What did you think when you saw that number?
I think the American people understand that we face a decades-long fight, and we need to have an intelligence community that's armed with sufficient tools. I think we took a step back in Washington this week by making it more difficult for the intelligence community to protect Americans' fundamental freedoms.
Does that mean we are less safe? Is that what you're arguing?
I think the world is clearly a more dangerous place than it was 15 years ago, and some of the lead-in you had there about social media makes it more possible for, I wouldn't call it command and control, but for the foreign fighters that have been flocking to ISIS territory in Syria and Iraq. They're also urging people to stay at home in America and in Europe and plan different kinds of attacks here. The world is a much more dangerous place, and the constituents in Nebraska know that.
So you think the House screwed this up?
I'm just saying we need to be given sufficient tools to the intelligence community to protect us in the age of jihad, and this city doesn't have a long-term strategy, and we took a step back this week by removing some key pieces of the Patriot Act.
Also, we asked about trust and who Americans trust with their personal information. I find this stunning. All right, we've got a great deal between the government and phone companies on the top line, but I want to put your focus on the bottom two. Not much and not at all. You put those numbers together, it's 61%. Do not trust the federal government. 58% do not trust the phone companies. I don't know if you're ever going to change that. Those numbers could get higher.
Washington is broken and dysfunctional in lots of ways that have bred national distrust. And the people across this country, they think Washington should do fewer things, but do the most important things more urgently. A lot of stuff that's done here is incredibly incompetent, but providing for national security, that's what Washington exists to do as its fundamental duty, and there's lots of doubt and distrust of the government, and it's understandable.
Well, give us an example then. I mean, you talk to your constituents in Nebraska, and you argue what?
You know, people are outraged this week about the leaked story on the TSA success rate, failure rate. 70 times, according to public reports, is all I'm citing here, 70 times in recent months there's been attempts by the government trying to see how do we audit these systems. 70 attempts to get explosives and weapons past TSA checkpoints and airports and onto aircraft. 67 out of 70 times is a 96% failure rate that we haven't done the job at TSA. And the people are demanding that Washington do the most important things. National security is what Washington exists to do, and it's not providing people with the comfort they deserve.
And to that point, they don't trust the government. They don't trust the phone companies. And now with this TSA report, how do they trust it?
I mean, TSA has a lot of explaining to do. We know that you see the metastasization of foreign jihadists. We know that some of them are trying to come here. And one of the most basic lessons of 9/11 was that the government was supposed to learn how to prevent the weaponization of an aircraft. And the people in my state don't think the government has even learned that lesson yet. This city needs a lot more urgency about a long-term strategy on preventing terror.
Just one last thing. Are you arguing that report should not have gone public? And would that have been better?
There is a lot about what isn't working inside the Department of Homeland Security that needs a spotlight shined upon it. At the same time, we want to make sure we're not giving a template to terrorists to know what some of the weaker points are. But right now, there are a lot of weak points, and the premise of your question is sort of suggesting that we should be telling the American people more about what's broken. I agree with that. I just want to make sure the specific ways information is ultimately declassified or leaked don't give the terrorists any kind of a roadmap.
Thank you, Senator. The Republican from Nebraska. Ben Sasse, thanks for coming back, sir.